The Norwegian Code of the Realm of 1274 is maybe the most successful piece of legislation in Europe in the High Middle Ages. And it was made here at the King's Castle in Bergen, the winter of 1273-1274. It wasn't the first piece of legislation made in Norway. We do find traces of legislation already in the Gulating compilation and in the Frostating compilation. But the idea of this comprehensive legislation did not emerge in Norway, but it emerged somewhere else in Europe, and that is Bologna in northern Italy. At the university here, they started studying Roman law in the midst of the 12th century. And while studying Roman law, they also studied the legislation of the Roman emperors. And by this, European kings got the ambition of legislating like the Roman emperors had done. We see this from the first code made in Europe, made by King Frederick II of Sicily in 1231. And it's called Liber Augustalis, Augustus' book, because in the foreword, the king says that he is now legislating for his kingdom like Emperor Augustus did for his empire. But this was not the direct cause for the legislation in Norway during the 1270s. That was the making of las Siete Partidas in Castilla, in present-day Spain, between 1255 and 1265. The ambition for King Alfonso X was to make a piece of legislation that could actually compete with the Roman law. And the winter of 1256-57, almost 100 persons from the court here in Bergen were in Castile. And they were there to witness the marriage between Princess Christina of Norway and Prince Felipe of Castile. And while there, witnessing this marriage, they also gained first-hand knowledge of the ongoing legislation project. This knowledge they brought with them back to Bergen, and that is the beginning of the making of the Norwegian Code of 1274. On one hand, the Norwegian Code of the Realm of 1274 is a rather small code, just like Liber Augustalis. It is Las Siete Partidas, which is the voluminous and comprehensive code of the Middle Ages. But the Code of 1274 was not only a single code, but it was a part of a legislative project. The king issued in 1276 his town code. Although half of the provisions were taken from the Code of 1274, the rest were all specific for the towns. In 1281, the king issued his code for Iceland. Again, half of the provisions were taken from the Code of 1274, while the rest was made specific for Icelandic conditions. And between 1273 and 1277, the king issued also what we can call an administrative code, called Hirdskor. So altogether, the Code of 1274 was a part of a legislative project that would totally change Norwegian law. And this project would be in force for a very long time. The Code of 1274 itself was in force till 1604. At that time, it was translated into Danish, changed at some points, and reissued. And it was enforced till 1687, when we got the Norwegian Code of 1687. So it was in force for over 400 years. The Town Code was in force till 1621, and the Administrative Code was in force till 1665. The Icelandic Code of 1281 is still in force on Iceland today, though today only small parts of it are a part of current Icelandic law. The law code Liber Augustalis, made 1231, were in use till the beginning of the 19th century. The Norwegian Code of the Realm was only used for approximately 400 years. On the other hand, Liber Augustalis only remain in a couple of manuscripts, while there remains several manuscripts of the Norwegian Code of the Realm of 1274. We have 39 complete manuscripts made before 1350, and there remain 49 manuscript fragments from that same period of time. This means that we today have about 100 manuscripts of the Code of 1274. That was enough that we can say that every judge, every sheriff, every bishop, and every monastery had a copy of the code next to the copies that must have existed at the king's court and at the archbishop's palace. But most manuscripts are lost. We usually estimate that 10% of medieval manuscripts remain. But let's imagine that legal manuscripts remain more often than other manuscripts, and that what we have today is 20% of the manuscripts of the code that existed around 1350. In that case, there must have been, with a population of 500,000 inhabitants in the Norwegian realm, one copy of the Code of 1274 per 1,150 inhabitants. That indicates that it was extensively used. In many ways, Norway was first united as one realm with the Code of 1274. Norway got its own archbishop with Reidar in 1151 and was reunited under one king with King Håkon IV in 1223. But despite of this, Norway was divided into 4 different juridical areas, each with their own laws. And it is surprising how different the laws in these 4 different juridical areas are from each other. On one hand, the Code of 1274 was given separately on each of the public assemblies in these juridical areas, at Frostating in 1274, at Gulating in 1275, and at Eidsivating and Borgarting in 1276. On the other hand, all 4 public assemblies in all 4 juridical areas got the same code and hence were regulated by the same law. This is what finally united Norway between 1274 and 1276. This would prove important in the future, because Norway would be a part of different unions with Sweden and Denmark. And despite the harmonization of Norwegian and Danish law and of the Danish and Norwegian legal system, the Norwegian law kept its medieval traces to some extent, enough to be a source of a separate and stronger Norwegian identity in the second half of the 18th century. This would prove important when making the Norwegian constitution in 1814.